What's up guys, in this video I'm going to be talking about the 3 super tricks that make DAZ Studio animation more fun and render 2 times, 3 times or even 10 times quicker. And throughout the years, having been coaching tens of thousands of DAZ Studio artists, I see a pattern, and that is people trying to create super cool looking animation on low-end PCs. And normally that's a recipe for disaster. But in today's short video I'm going to show you the 3 super tricks that make that a reality. Trick number 1 has to do with characters and figures. DAZ Studio is an amazing software and it has some amazing characters and figures. Here in this example, a Michael 4. But we all know that it's kind of tedious to go and select, arms, hands, and twist and bend them, one by one, creating, poses and moving characters over time. That is just something I don't do. It just takes, for me, it takes the fun out of it. And if you're like me, you like fast results, right? So what I do, and I highly suggest you do, is use the built-in Animate. Go to Windows panes and it has Animate. I also have installed Animate 2, so I bought the paid version of it, and the built-in version is really good, so you don't need the paid one to get started. It's as simple as taking and dragging, drag and drop. It's that simple, and you've got an animation already finished. So that is trick number 1, using tools to get animated figures right out of the box. Right, so trick number 2 has to do with lighting. And if you've been following what I do, what I've been doing for the last decade, you know that I just love lighting. And there's a lot to be said about it, but one thing that truly gives you speed and more fun is to use less of it. A lot of people overdo lighting, they add tons of lights. I would just say use one. And use the one that's the simplest and fastest by far, which is a distant light. Simply select it here, rotate it to match your scene, add some shadows to it, and off you go. You're ready for rendering. And when you render, just don't use super high-end, you can use X and Y3, that's more than enough, will create good quality rendering. And shading rate, use 1 for most cases. That would just give a little bit faster rendering as well. Just these small tricks here can increase your rendering time. But really, when you render this now, you see that it's looking pretty okay, right? It's not a Hollywood style lighting, but it's quick and it just goes in seconds. You can just play with it, you can adjust it, to come more from the side. You can create more tension on your character, and by doing so, we also now in this particular case, the figure already has a little bit of lighting in it. It's the ambient that's already added to the skin, which is really cool. I usually delete it, so if I select the figure, go to Surfaces tab, select Michael, I can just usually just drop down the ambient. But that's one way of increasing that. It's on a surface level, adjust ambient. It just gives a little bit more definition in the dark areas. However, if you want to match it towards the background, which we're going to do in a moment, then that's not the best option. So I usually just drop it to nothing. What I then do, based on different circumstances, I add an additional light, which is the Uber environment. Let me just locate it here. There we go. OmniFlicker, Uber environment, base, merge into scene. Once loaded, selected, go to Parameters tab. In the light option here, light section, you can just select ambient and lower that to whatever that suits your scene. Maybe 50 is okay for this one. That is a more controlled ambient, which you can adjust quickly, which also adds to the overall scenery. So I highly recommend you lower any ambient you have on the character and add it manually, so you have full control over it. Great. Next, trick number 3 has to do with the background or the environment or the scenery you have. Because let's face it, we're not just gonna render a character on a black backdrop. We want him to be part of an environment. So I'm gonna go ahead and load that. I'm gonna load here. For instance, one of my favorite props ever, stonemason streets of Asia. Right, I'm gonna merge that into the scene. Let it load. And the moment you add it to your scene, you can adjust that Uber environment and rescale it on the general tab here to not disturb your scenery. The thing is, once you add, and by the way, this is still an animation, right? We still have a, guy walking here. The thing is, if you are now rendering a whole set, like an environment, and you have more stuff to render, it's gonna be a little bit heavier on your system. So for instance, right now we just have that single distant light and the Uber ambient, right? And we push render. It's gonna first optimize the images. This is just on the done created once. Then it starts rendering. It goes rather fast. However, as you can see, while the character looks pretty okay, the environment now looks pretty washed out and boring, right? So we kind of lost detail there. And it's not fun to lose detail. We love details, right? We artists love details. We love quality and speed. So how do we create speed and quality at the same time? Well, one of the things you can do is you can go to Uber environment and adjust it to use slightly more advanced option. And we also need to increase a little bit the quality of it, or it's going to look just horrible. So now when I render, you're gonna see that it's adding a little bit more detail, but it's taking a little bit more to finish here. You can see we are at 9 seconds, 10, 11, 12, still pretty fast, right? It has now a little bit more detail and definition. It's still a little bit splotchy here and there because we don't have the full quality needed. We will need to increase that 2-3 times to get more quality. And there is one more setting we can try on Uber environment. That's going to the indirect lighting option, which is then gonna create a whole new set of quality in the image. So I'm gonna increase the quality sample here and now do a render again. This time you're gonna see that it's gonna take a lot more processor power to finish. Now it's gonna look pretty good. It's gonna have all those bouncing light calculations. It's gonna look really nice in the shadows. It's gonna look nice and vibrant. But as you can see, it's eating rendering time. And I mean, for a still image we can wait, but if you're doing 1000 frames of animation, then this is becoming a problem. And the thing is, how do we mix this? How do we take this we just learned and make it look good, make it look decent and good, but still have the super fast rendering speed? Well, on our homepage here, basic3training.com, we got a bunch of videos, and one of them is from the award-winning DAZ studio music video I made for the Animate contest, and it shows actually that trick being used. So if I just scroll this music video here, drag it to the option where it's using that trick, that's it. This here is done using that trick I'm going to show. This short sequence, you just saw that with the black silhouette. This one is used with that trick. Renders super fast, and I had to use that because I just had 2 weeks to complete this video, so I had to use that trick, and it's just super cool and smooth looking. So here is the trick. You render the background separately first in super high quality, and you do that once. Alright, then you take that background and you add it on a flat plane, put it behind the figure. So let's do that. Let's add a camera, and let's remove Michael for a moment. I want to just move him away physically from the scene. We're just gonna create a nice looking render. just real fast. So with the same settings we have right now. Alright, let me just increase the rendering size slightly. And we are not doing anything super fancy. It's still just a pretty low res render. I'm gonna let it render. So we're now gonna spend a few minutes rendering a good looking background. We can actually adjust lighting just slightly to make it look a little bit cooler. Still just one light, right? I'm not using anything else, guys. I'm just using a single light. So let's use lighting that looks a little bit cooler and has a little bit more punch to it. I actually use this camera. Great. Okay, render. Okay, so I'm creating the background separately, rendering that. I'm gonna pause the video while this is rendering. Alright, super cool. A couple of minutes later we got a nice looking render, and as I say, it's gonna take you a few minutes to finish depending on the quality and size. Works if you do it once, not so fun if you do it for each render, but now we can save it. I'll just call it background BMP, save. Now that we are done, I'm gonna bring back our Michael. He's been gone for enough time. I'm gonna bring him back to the scene, and I'm gonna remove the entire scenery. So I'm losing the entire scenery. Also very important, now that you have rendered the background, you no longer need that super advanced rendering, so you can switch back to doing just ambient. That's gonna make it a lot easier on rendering. And now we're gonna create a plate. Primitive, you got plane. Let's just use 1 meter for now. It's just a small plane. Alright, and I'm gonna raise it off the ground. Rotate, there we go, like that. 90, and I'm gonna scale it so it has that correct width ratio, 1280 and 720, which is that ratio we need for the background to rotate. We can scale the background and we can really put it behind him. So that it just works. Now if you happen to get into this deadlock situation when you cannot rotate it properly, it's very easy to do by using that rotation tool, because that tool has rings that just ignore that. Okay, so if you find yourself using that in that deadlock situation, just use that function. Okay, so now we can place that behind him and scale it all the way we need. Once we are done, you pretty much want to have that background straight towards the camera. That's the best advice I can give you, so we don't skew it in any way. Alright. Next, we simply select that in the scene tab, and in the surfaces tab you load it with the image on the diffuse color. So browse and just select that background we just created, add it. Once it's added to your scene, it's very important that you lower diffusion. You keep it white but lower it. You don't want to catch any lighting on it. Next, you can choose white ambient and increase it to 100. So now you've got the background behind. You can adjust it here on how harsh you want it to look. Also, you can change its color. You can adjust its color to fine tune or match or whatever you want to have, that lighting or colors. So you can still tweak that although it's already rendered. So it's kind of a cool thing. Alright, so once it's done, you can basically put it in such a fashion so that it appears to be behind him. Now, as you can see, we have right now no shadow casting, and I'm not gonna explain shadow casting on the ground right now. It would just take a little bit too long to explain right now. But a funny thing happens now, because we don't have the background right now. We don't have the scenery no more. So when you render this now, just check the settings, and when you render this now, although we use full HD quality, it renders in 3 seconds flat. Although we're using full HD resolution, it renders in just 3 seconds flat. And it matches in pretty perfectly because we have the same lighting setup. Now, why it looks a little bit fuzzy is because you can use a little bit lower shading rate if you like. You can use a shading rate of 0.5 or something like that. That would, you know, increase the sharpness of the background. That's not what I want to show you here. I want to show you a way to get, you know, you still have a little bit of movement possibilities. This is just perfect for animation. But if you get a little bit closer to him, all right, and zoom in on the camera a little bit, you're gonna get a perfect looking backdrop that is a little bit fuzzy looking, which is just perfect for our needs because it's just in the background and it just blends perfectly. So as you can see, we are rendering in a high resolution in just 3 seconds flat. That's how fast it goes. And you wonder, if you really want to truly, you know, compare it to the original setup we had, I was rendering at around 700. So it's in 1 second. It takes 1 second to complete, guys. That's how fast it goes. It's just insane. We have super quality on the background. We still have movement. We still can have fun with it, but it goes so much faster. So I just showed the manual approach, how to do this manually, and it's a kind of a no-brainer. We just substitute the background with a flat version and take it out of the equation, because usually the backdrop is the largest portion of your render in most of the time. That just instantly takes away that rendering processing power. And if you want to have an automatic version that just does this, everything we just covered automatically, but also adds a 360-degree background, not a flat one like we just did, but a 360-degree, then you can go ahead and use our new Movie Maker plugin for DAZ Studio 4.6. So in that case, I would just remove the plane, remove the Uber environment, remove all lighting and everything else because we don't need it, and I would just add and load one of the pre-made backgrounds. First, I can choose the scenery. Just make undockable. I can just choose whatever set I want instantly. Let's say I want to use the prison block by night. Just double click on it, loads into the scene, and instantly you're presented with the character in the scene. All right, and the thing is, right now the background is in 360 degrees, right? So you can go ahead and look at it in all 360 degrees, right? Further on, it has a super cool feature. Let me just show you here. 13, for instance. You can switch to a different camera node. It has a cool feature that enables you to have like certain items appear to be in front of the character. And so if I move Michael and place him just, you know, underneath that structure, you can see that indeed he's behind it. And the cool thing now, if I render this and choose, let's say I choose ray trace shadows and render, the thing is, it goes that fast. 2 seconds flat. It has shadow matching lighting, environment that surrounds your character, and you have full control over it. Instantly load, instantly change camera angles. You have, in this case, you have 34 camera angles. For instance, number 19, you can put him behind bars, right? And simply move him a little bit closer here. There we go. And if you just render this, it's instantly matching the background with shadows and all. And the cool thing is this is for animation, guys. So if I drag that, it's already pre-made to work with animation. So it just takes everything we covered out of the equation. You just load your characters, add the anime blocks, choose your background, choose your camera angle, and hit render. It's that easy, and it's super fast. And if you prefer to have a different background, just go back here and load a different one. For instance, Egyptian temple, load that one instead, and off you go. Can now move Michael a little bit closer to our camera, moving it farther away. There we go. Awesome. And you can adjust the camera and choose the angle. Remember, it's 360 degrees, so you have all the options of zooming in, zooming out. And what you also can do here is add a Z tilt to the camera. Oops, that was the figure. Excuse me. Select the camera. All right, and you can just add a little bit of Z rotation to it. Tilt it like that. That is also possible to do, and it's all just matching. So you can just set it here. Choose whatever angles you want, and you can switch angles at any time. This is done for animation. So if you scroll the timeline and change angles, you're gonna just add keys and you can change angles and, you know, create an entire animation. And when you're done, you simply click on render. Guys, that ends this video. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you find this useful and see how it instantly can change the way you work with animation. So if you find that stuff cool, right now we have a release launch on the Movie Maker for DAZ 3.46, which is an updated version which has some more effects, but most and foremost it works in DAZ 3.46. So we got that here, and you got a bunch of amazing backgrounds, including how to make your own animations here. Movie Maker Director. And you've got here super background packs. You've got Movie Maker Maestro, shows you how to create your own backgrounds, and you got plenty of fun to choose from. So if you like that stuff, click on the button below and participate in this new relaunch. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.